There is no mirror in this world more brutally honest than marriage. It does not flatter. It does not filter. It does not pause. It reflects raw, relentless, and sacred the fractured architecture of your psyche. You can run from enemies, lie to friends, manipulate strangers, but in marriage, you are naked. And the soul standing across from you is not just your partner, it is your fate, disguised as flesh. You thought love would be your salvation. You believed the fairy tales, the Instagram quotes, the Hollywood daydreams. But now, you sit in the quiet war of shared silence, realizing this is not just a relationship. This is a battlefield between who you are and who you pretend to be. Marriage is not romance. It is alchemy, the sacred fire that burns away illusion, that exposes your shadows, that resurrects your forgotten wounds, like ghosts knocking at midnight. The very things you buried come to dine at your kitchen table. They wear your voice. They echo in your arguments. They sleep in your bed. Because marriage, real marriage, is psychological warfare, not against your spouse, but against the fractured selves you refuse to integrate. Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. And marriage, the truest kind, is the great revealer, the mirror that cannot be escaped, the test you cannot cheat, the divine confrontation that forces you to face yourself. You thought you were choosing a partner, but the psyche chooses opposites not for comfort, but for growth. Your partner is not your twin flame. They are your unconscious given legs and breath. The traits you repress, they embody. The insecurities you hide, they trigger. The wounds you deny, they press precisely, persistently, painfully. This is no accident. This is the crucible, the place where egos die and souls are forged. Most people don't marry a person, they marry a fantasy. And when that fantasy dies as it must, they believe love has ended. But love has only just begun. Because the death of the illusion is the birth of transformation. And transformation is brutal. There will be days when you see your partner not as they are, but through the lens of your childhood pain, when every criticism feels like your father's disapproval, when every silence sounds like your mother's neglect. Marriage dredges it all up, not to torment you, but to free you. But most don't stay long enough to see it. They flee. They find someone new and repeat the pattern again and again because they believe the enemy is external. They don't realize. Every unresolved shadow will resurrect itself in the next partner and the next until you face the root within. Marriage is the final exam of your inner work. It does not require perfection but presence. It does not demand performance but courage. The courage to say, this is who I am, broken, complex, unpolished, and I'm willing to grow. But growth is not pretty. It is not date nights and matching pajamas. It is emotional surgery with no anesthesia. It is shedding the masks you didn't know you were wearing. It is letting your partner see the parts of you you've kept hidden from everyone, including yourself. And when you do, when the masks are off, and the wounds are bare, and the illusions are shattered, something miraculous happens. Intimacy, real intimacy. Not the sugary performance sold in romance novels, but the gritty, sacred vulnerability of being fully seen and still chosen. Marriage is not the end of loneliness. It is the beginning of your encounter with the parts of yourself you abandoned long ago. It is not about finding the right person. It is about becoming the person who can meet the right one with open eyes, steady hands, and a heart that has been baptized by fire. Because every argument is an invitation. Every misunderstanding is a doorway. Every emotional trigger is a compass pointing inward to something within you that still needs healing. But most people don't listen. They blame, they point, they demand change from the other without realizing the battlefield is within. You cannot ask for a safe marriage if you are a danger to yourself. You cannot build trust if you lie to your own soul. You cannot demand vulnerability if you wear a mask every day. Marriage will not fix your inner emptiness. It will magnify it. It will echo through the hallways of your home until you are forced to confront the cavern inside you, the one you've spent a lifetime avoiding. And yet, this is the beauty of it. Marriage is not supposed to make you happy. It is supposed to make you conscious. Because in the end, you will realize your partner is not your problem. They are your mirror. The way they love you or fail to reveals the way you love yourself. The way they trigger you or soothe you exposes the way you treat your own soul. And the way they walk with you in your darkest hours teaches you everything about what it means to be human, flawed, and worthy. This is the test, not of romance, not of compatibility, but of depth, of character, of soul. And only those who are willing to burn, to let the illusions die, will find what marriage truly offers. Not comfort, not perfection, but the rare, sacred path to becoming whole. The rest, they will keep searching, keep blaming, keep cycling, wondering why love always seems to fail them, never realizing it was never about love. It was about truth. And truth is not always kind, but it is always liberating. You will not pass this test by charming your way through it. You will not pass by quoting books or repeating the words of therapists or influencers. Marriage is not impressed by intellect. It does not bow to eloquence. It listens only to truth, the kind that leaks from your bones when you're too tired to pretend. The kind that cracks through your voice when you run out of excuses. The kind that lives beneath all your polished personas and social masks. Because marriage will not fall in love with your mask. It will fall in love with your shadow, or it will leave. Do you understand the gravity of that? You are not just loving someone else. You are choosing to become the kind of person who can carry love without dropping it every time your ego is bruised. You are choosing to stand firm when your inner child wants to run. You are choosing to stay soft when your trauma screams to shut down. This is the discipline most will never speak of, because discipline in love is not about control, it's about surrender. The daily decision to show up, speak truth, and listen deeply, even when your defenses beg you to do otherwise. It is waking up on the day you don't feel in love and loving anyway. It is offering peace in the middle of an argument because you care more about connection than victory. It is saying, I was wrong. Not because you are weak, but because you are strong enough to hold your pride in check. This is the battlefield of marriage. Not the loud wars, but the quiet choices. The way you pause instead of attack. The way you breathe instead of blame. The way you remember that the person before you is not the enemy, but the echo of your own unfinished story. Marriage teaches you what you never learned in childhood, how to sit with discomfort, how to endure contradiction, how to offer grace in the middle of someone else's storm, and most of all, how to face the storms within yourself. Because here's the raw truth. Every argument you have is rooted in belief. Not the words being said, but the meaning you assign to them, the wound they touch, the story they trigger. Marriage is a crucible of these stories. Every room you enter together is a stage for the myths you carry. You think it's about the dishes, the schedules, the money. But what it's really about is abandonment, rejection, fear of being unseen, fear of being unworthy. You think you're fighting over what happened. You're not. You're fighting over what it meant to you. You're defending your past, projecting it onto your present, and calling it communication. This is why marriage is spiritual, not religious. Spiritual in the deepest, most harrowing sense, because it requires you to dissolve the self you cling to become the one who can love with open hands and an undefended heart. Do you think that's easy? Of course it's not. That's why so few make it. But those who do, who survive the internal collapse, who rebuild from truth. Instead of fantasy, they find something most never will. A love that has stared into the abyss and stayed. A love that doesn't vanish at the first sign of fear. A love that walks with you through the ruins of your ego and still whispers, I'm not going anywhere. That love, the one that sees all of you and stays, cannot be found until you are willing to be seen, fully, flawed, fragmented, and still worthy. And to offer the same, because marriage is not where you hide your weakness. It's where your weakness is baptized in acceptance. And your partner, if they are doing their inner work, will not judge your wounds, they will hold them. Not fix, not lecture, not shame, but hold like a sacred flame between trembling hands. This is why marriage, real marriage, is rare. Not because it's hard, but because it's honest. And honesty is terrifying to those still in love with their illusions. You cannot marry for peace if you have not made peace with yourself. You cannot expect stability from a union that exists to make you unstable, not out of malice, but out of necessity. Because everything that is unstable in you must surface. It must be seen. It must be healed. And healing is messy. It's crying on the floor at 2 a.m. because something your partner said shattered a belief you didn't know you had. It's realizing you've been withholding affection, not because of them, but because you're terrified of vulnerability. It's choosing to forgive not just them, but yourself for the ways you showed up when you didn't know better. Marriage will break you open. That's the point. Not to destroy you, but to rebuild you into someone capable of carrying love without conditions, without games, without the armor you thought you needed. This is your test, not to prove your worth, but to meet it in the eyes of someone who sees you not as a fantasy, but as a soul in progress, and loves you anyway. Most people mistake marriage for a destination, a final arrival into the arms of comfort, companionship, and completion. But marriage is not a place, it is a process, an unfolding, a descent into the labyrinth of the self with another, as your mirror as your mentor, and your mentor as your wound. It does not end at I do. That is only where the dream ends and the work begins. Because no vow, no ring, no ceremony can protect you from the parts of yourself you have not yet confronted. The altar is not where the commitment is sealed. The commitment is sealed in the daily deaths of the ego, in the morning forgiveness after a night of distance, in the choice to understand when judgment would be easier, in the patience to learn your partner's language instead of demanding they speak yours. That is the work, not romantic, not glamorous, but holy. And it begins the moment you realize your partner is not yours to control, to fix, or to mold. They are not here to meet your every need. They are not responsible for your happiness. They are not your savior. They are your equal. A sovereign soul with their own shadows, battles, and evolution. And marriage, if entered consciously, is where two sovereigns meet, not to conquer, but to co-create. But co-creation requires a death, the death of the fantasy self, the one who never gets triggered, the one who's always right, the one who believes they've already healed. That self must die. Because the moment you enter real intimacy, you will meet the child inside you, the one still aching to be held, still terrified of being abandoned, still afraid of being truly seen. Marriage will expose that child, not to shame them, but to invite them home. And when your partner holds space for that child, something ancient happens, a healing, not just in you, but in your lineage, in your ancestors, in the stories passed down through generations of broken homes and silenced emotions. Because when you choose to stay, to listen, to love through the trigger, you are breaking a chain. You are becoming the first in your bloodline to love without fear. That is no small thing. It is a revolution. But do not expect it to be easy. The mind will rebel. The ego will scream. The old self, the one who protected you through trauma, who kept you safe through disconnection, will not go quietly. You will sabotage. You will withdraw. You will want to run. Not because love is wrong, but because it's real. And real love requires real presence, real accountability, real humility. And most are not ready for that. They say they want love, but they mean validation. They say they want connection, but they mean control. They say they want partnership, but they mean projection. Marriage will show you the difference. It will strip you down to your essence, not to shame you, but to show you what is real, what is lasting, what is worthy of being built, and what must be left behind. You will learn that peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the presence of understanding. You will learn that love is not a feeling. It is a practice, a decision, a discipline. You will learn that safety is not created by promises, but by the courage to reveal yourself without armor. And above all, you will learn that marriage is not the story you were told, it is the story you choose to write. Day after day, wound after wound, truth after truth. But only if you are willing to meet yourself in the silence, willing to admit when you are wrong, willing to apologize not just to your partner, but to the parts of yourself you betrayed in the name of pride. Willing to grow, not for them, but because the person you are becoming demands it. This is the cost of love. Not flowers, not gifts, but the death of illusion. And in its place, intimacy fierce, fragile, and forged in fire. The kind that cannot be faked. The kind that holds you when you are too broken to hold yourself. The kind that sees through your defenses and whispers, I still choose you. But that whisper, that sacred vow, can only be heard when you are finally still enough to listen, still enough to stop running, still enough to face the parts of you that have never known peace, still enough to become the person worthy of the love you seek. And once you do, once you surrender, once you soften, once you see your partner not as an adversary, but as your greatest teacher, you will understand. Marriage was never meant to save you. It was meant to awaken you, to break you, to strip you, so that the version of you who walks out the other side is no longer a child begging for love, but a sovereign, whole, awakened being, capable of giving it. And now we enter the sacred chamber most fear to touch, the domain of accountability. Because love without accountability is a fantasy, and accountability without love is tyranny. Marriage holds both in its trembling palms. It asks of you not only tenderness, but truth. Brutal, unwavering truth, the kind that burns your ego but cleanses your soul. In marriage, there is no hiding behind your potential. No more weaponizing silence. No more gaslighting your way out of responsibility. Every word you say, every word you don't, carves itself into the architecture of your union, and the house you build together will either be made of truth or termites. You think your tone doesn't matter, that rolling your eyes was just a moment, that avoiding the hard conversation was keeping the peace? No, it was laying bricks of resentment, invisible but heavy. And one day, you will look around and wonder why the intimacy has vanished, why the laughter has dried up, why the warmth is gone. It didn't leave. You drove it out with tiny betrayals, death by 1,000 self-deceptions. This is why marriage is for the brave, because accountability means looking your partner in the eye after you failed them and saying, I did this, it wasn't okay, and I will do better. No excuses, no defenses, no spin. Just a raw, guttural confession of a person choosing to grow. And not just once, but again, and again, and again, because you will fail them, and they will fail you. This is inevitable. What matters is not the perfection of your actions, but the sincerity of your repair. Can you own it? Can you hold their hurt without collapsing into shame? Can you remain present through the discomfort long enough to rebuild trust? Because that's what real love does. It stays, not when it's easy, but when it's excruciating. When every cell in your body wants to run, defend, deflect, and instead you choose to lean in, to ask, what part of you did I just harm? And then listen, truly listen, without needing to be right. That's the marriage most never reach, because it requires the death of the persona. And most would rather protect their mask than protect their bond. But if you can do this, if you can practice radical accountability, something shifts. Trust is no longer a fragile glass. It becomes a living, breathing presence between you. You learn how to rupture and repair. You learn how to hurt and heal. And in that rhythm, in that sacred dance, you become unshakable. Not because you never break, but because you always return. Do you see? This is not weakness. This is warrior work. This is inner revolution. To say, I will not let my past sabotage my present. To say, I will not let my pain dictate my pattern. To say, I will not project my trauma onto the one I love even when it hurts. That is the power of presence. And presence is not passive. It is the fiercest act of love you will ever perform. And your partner will feel it, not in grand gestures, but in the way you remember what they said when they thought you weren't listening, in the way you check your tone before it cuts, in the way you choose empathy over ego, not because it's easier, but because you made a vow not to abandon them, especially when it's hard. That is the real vow. Not the one spoken at the altar, but the one you live in the quiet spaces, the one that echoes when no one is watching, the one that turns you from a consumer of love into a creator of it. Because love is not something you find. It is something you build brick by brick, word by word, act by act, until it becomes a fortress no storm can touch. But you cannot build with someone else what you refuse to build within. That's why marriage begins with self-confrontation. Because the parts of you that avoid discomfort will avoid conflict. The parts of you that need control will strangle vulnerability. The parts of you that chase perfection will never tolerate the humanity of your partner. And so the work begins not in them, but in you. To grieve the fantasy of who you thought you had to be. To strip away the performance. To heal the wounded child within you, so you can love with adult hands. Not needy hands. Not controlling hands, but hands that hold steady, sacred, and strong. That is marriage at its highest expression. Not a merger of needs, but a union of wholeness. Two people, awake to their shadows, committed to their evolution, and brave enough to say, I will not let fear run this love. I will not let my past own this future. I will not abandon myself, and I will not abandon you. That is the vow. That is the test. That is the sacred terror of becoming someone worthy of the very thing you crave most. So in the end, you must ask yourself not, do I love them? But can I face myself with them? Can I stand in the raw, unfiltered light of truth and not flinch? Can I let go of being right, being praised, being perfect to become real? Because marriage is not the reward for having it all figured out. It is the initiation, the sacred crucible where the parts of you still hiding must come into the light, where love is not a possession, but a proving ground. And not the proving of performance, but of presence. The kind of presence that holds steady through chaos. The kind that sees the monster in the mirror and chooses to stay. You will lose the fairy tale. You will bury the illusion. You will grieve the version of love sold to you by songs, screens, and stories. But in that grave, something holy will rise. A love forged in fire, tempered by truth. made unbreakable not because it never cracks, but because it never lies. A love where two become not one but whole, side by side. And when you reach that place, when you look into your partner's eyes, not as a savior, not as a projection, but as a soul who chose to walk through the fire with you, you will understand marriage was never meant to complete you. It was meant to reveal you. And what it reveals, if you're willing, is the you that was always there, before the masks, before the wounds, before the world tamed you, the you who is finally ready to love fully, to live consciously, to walk beside another as nothing less than your whole unrelenting, untamed, immortal self. Burn the mask, face the test, become